So we've completed this first sheet, and the project requires a second sheet, which will be interior renderings. And so we're looking at the sheet of interior renderings. These are ray traced renderings. I made a couple of changes to the model in that I made a terrazzo floor, and we'll do that next. And that's because it gives these nice kind of reflectivity to the surface, kind of enhances the overall realism of the scene. And so let's get started. I'm going to go to the view top of stairs that I created. I've adjusted this a little bit. I opened up the viewport to show kind of the edges of the windows. I'd ask you to pay attention to your layout here. This is your product. Make sure it's telling the complete story of what we have as far as interior features, at least in this view. And let's go ahead and go to the mezzanine now and actually create a terrazzo material for that floor. So I'm going to select the floor, and I'm going to go to Edit Type, and I'm going to duplicate it. And I'll call this terrazzo. Oops. And click OK. And then we'll go into it and edit it. And we're going to add a new layer. And I'll just move this up using the up arrow. And we're going to just change some thicknesses here because this has 0 thickness. We'll make this a 1/2 inch. And in order to keep the floor's thickness the same, we'll just reduce the other one by a 1/2 inch. So it's still an overall 5-inch floor. Now we need to make that terrazzo material. So I'm going to go to go to the categories for the material finish. And I've created a couple of them here. I'll just make a new one. I'm going to create a new material. I'm going to right click on it and rename it. And we'll open up the library palette, and we'll go to the appearance folder, and we'll look for flooring, and I think it's in stone. And then we can just roll down until we find terrazzo, and I'll select the gray and white one. I think that's probably, let's see what we have here. Gray and white, that's kind of a flecked finish. And I'll go ahead and import that. And we can close this palette off. And then let's make a few modifications to this image. I'm going to bring the glossiness up. And I believe I did about 63 on the one before, so I'll come somewhere near there. On this, I'm going to turn the reflectivity on. And I'm going to slide this one up till about 93. And the oblique reflectivity, I think I had set for about 87. So we'll go ahead and apply that and do all of our OKs to get back out. And we'll go to the top of stairs view. And it's still selected. So you can see we have that kind of a glossiness appearing in the surface, but it's really not rendered accurately yet because we haven't ray traced it. So I'm going to go to View, and I'm going to go to Renderings. And I'll make some adjustments here. I want to make sure that this isn't set for exterior sun. I want it to be set for interior sun and artificial. That's really important. I want to make sure, let's try to pick a time of day. Let's maybe say, I'm going to say about somewhere around 8 p.m. I think that's when the sun will be setting. I think that'll cast through the building correctly. I'm not sure, but you see the nice kind of lighting that comes in from that low angle of sun coming through the window. So I'll click OK on that. And we'll go ahead and draft render it. So I have it in draft mode. It's 1,000 pixels wide, so that's not too bad. We may want to upscale that in a bit, but we'll get to that next. So I'm going to click render. This will take a little bit to do. So what I'll do is I'll wait for the dialog box to show up, and then I'll hit pause until it completes. So to shorten the video length. So we can see the scene is really dark. Let's go ahead and adjust the exposure. So I'm going to open up the exposure palette, and I'm going to slide this until it's a little bit brighter. Just a little bit is all you need to do. I'll go a little bit brighter. All right, I think the floor looks a little bit too bright, so I'm going to click OK on that. I'm just going to throw this rendering out right now. We won't save it. And I'm also wondering why I'm not getting my monitor showing up with the correct decal in it. Let me just check on that. And that's because I've lost my link to it, so I'll need to correct that. Okay, I've got my graphic back. Next thing I want to do though is fix the kind of the reflectivity of that floor surface. So I'm going to go to Manage, open up the material palette, and on some of these values, I'm going to just tone these down a little bit. So I'm going to slide down the glossiness a bit, and the direct reflectivity. I'll pull that down. Sometimes they seem to not be exactly consistent. So I'll click Apply with that. And OK. And now we're ready to re-render our scene after making some adjustments. So I'm going to go to the View palette, open up the rendering tool. And this time I'm going to go to a medium quality. And I'm going to use this printer resolution because this is going to allow me to upscale my image a little bit. So it's at 1400 pixels. I'm going to just turn this up maybe to, let's see if I can type in 200 pixels. I'm not sure that made a change. Let me see if I go back to 100, if that makes a change. Doesn't seem to, so I'll just go to 300. It's a little bit oversampling, but it'll take a little longer to render, but this could be the feature image on our screen, so it might be worth the effort. So I'm going to go ahead and click render, and I'll put it on pause while it goes out and renders. This will probably take about a minute. Okay, so that took about 3.5 minutes. So you may want to not have your resolution set up that high if you want it to go a little bit faster. This is really kind of oversampled for what we need. And it makes quite a large file size. It's 18 megabytes. Now, really important, I'm happy with this scene, although I would still continue to make adjustments with it. I think the floor is still too glossy. I would tone that down. I think it would be nice to add some lights to the ceiling panel in the office back here, the private office area that we've created. And there could be some more experimenting with the light, but there is some really nice things happening with the light. You notice that it's a setting sun, and so it's casting a nice shadow on the walls here, kind of illuminating these things, creating nice shadow details. We're still getting some effects from our interior lighting. You'll notice on the surface of the countertops, we can see pools of light from the up lights or from the down lights that are there also. So let's say that this is an acceptable one, and we're going to go and, very importantly now, save this to the project. And I'll leave it as top of stair 2, and I think I don't have a top of stair 2 rendering, and I'll click OK. And then we'll just go ahead and put that away. It'll go back to its normal rendering scene. And I mean, this is a place obviously where you could try to work out some of those other kind of details of lighting by the way you adjust the natural rendering settings here with the graphic displays options. So let's look now at what's going to happen when we do the idea of placing these on sheets. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new sheet. So I'll go to Sheets and right click on it and open up a new sheet and select the presentation sheet, and I'm going to drag on the rendering that we created. And I think that looks pretty good at its size, but let's say we want to experiment with adjusting the size of it. If I double click on this, because this is a bitmapped image, I can actually adjust this to be any size that I want. And obviously then I would drag on the drag it off and drag it back on to get the title box to line up. But that's a pretty good size. I might think about adjusting the cropping in the scene so I had some room for those 2 other additional rendering images. And so I'll flip back to this, kind of close things off. You'll notice now in this one I have a full office view. I created a meeting room view and a outside break area view and rendered all three of those and placed them on the sheet. And yours can be any kind of variation that you would want on that on your sheet, but I would put at least 3 views on it. And then, of course, just to run through it again, we'll go to export that as a PDF. And we'll want to make sure that we, excuse me. Sorry, I didn't have that highlighted. Make sure we select the sheets that we want to output. And I'm looking for the drawings. There's the drawings. Sheet. We've made a lot of sheets through the project, so we want, in this case, the 2 sheets: the interior model rendering, model view, and the interior renderings exported. And make sure you're zooming to 100% and where you're saving it, and you'll be all set. So I look forward to some cool looking interior renderings.